Okay, so for module 1, I really want to start talking about falling into the breakup vortex. So when you're in that vortex, it is like being in the middle of a cyclone. I understand. It doesn't matter if you're the one that dumped somebody or you were the one that got dumped. The reality is that there is a huge impact on us either way. So if you are the dumpee, if you've been dumped, you go through all kinds of shock and pain and anger and loss and a whirlwind of experiences of things that you weren't expecting, or maybe you were, but you didn't know it was coming when it did. If you were the dumper, you go through all kinds of feelings like guilt and shame and questioning if you should have broken up. Either way, it's such a hard thing to go through. So when you're sucked into that vortex, it's this feeling of going into a tunnel, and life happens all around you, and you are sucked into this place that you can't seem to get out of. When you're in that place, we all go through certain stages. So shame and loss and fear are a major part of that. So let's talk about that for a second. So shame about what? Fear about what? So when you are falling in love, when you are thinking it's forever, when you're in a relationship, there's a lot of pride and a lot of excitement about what we're going through. This is my partner, this is who I am with, and then all of a sudden it stops. So there's this embarrassment that says, wow, now I'm no longer with this person. Does that mean that it wasn't real love? Does that mean I should minimize what the relationship was about? And the truth is that the people around us, because they love us, they kind of support that, like, oh, he was an asshole anyway, or he wasn't worth it, or she wasn't worth it anyway. And so we get sucked into this experience of wanting to minimize what the relationship was or who that person was, which is really confusing, because when you love somebody, you just love somebody. And so when you're hurt, you want to distance yourself from that, but you also don't want to forget the magnitude of what that experience was. So when you're sucked into that vortex, it's really hard to start to find yourself on your way out. So if you've ever been to the park, if you've ever been on, I don't know what those toys are that you spin yourself, you get on and somebody runs and spins, and you go so fast that you're not sure when to let go or how tight to hold on. That's what this experience is like. And for most of you who are in the beginning stages of a breakup, that's exactly where you are. You're holding on so tight that you're not sure if you should let go or if you should hold on even tighter. So it's a really confusing time. So I want you to know that I know that, and that for most people going through this experience, when they're in that hole, when they're in that vortex, it's like being frozen. You're not exactly sure where to go. So first thing that I want you to do is acknowledge the place that you're in. It's scary as hell. It's uncomfortable. It's almost like it's hard to think about and do anything else when you're in that place. So I'm wanting you to first breathe and know that you are totally okay, and that you're going to be okay, and that it is not an easy place for you to be. It's not an easy place for anybody to be. But the first step is absolutely acknowledging that you're sucked in. It's like being in a tunnel. So that's the first step. Okay, let's talk about shame and loss of love. So this is a really hard one, because when you're in love with somebody and you are proud of that relationship, and then all of a sudden you lose it, it's this confusing experience of wanting to devalue it, knock it down, or hold it up on some really amazing pedestal. And the people around you, again, who love you, want to support you and want to commiserate with the experience and the pain that you're going through. So you're going to hear people minimize the pain that you've had, minimize the experience. Oh, it's only been 2 years. Oh, it's only been 6 years. It's only been 3 months. But the reality is that it's really confusing, because it doesn't matter if it was 2 months or 3 years or 6 years or 25 years. The truth is that the love that you experienced was real. And we don't want to devalue that experience for you. But at the same time, we don't want you to get sucked into the idea that that was the only love that you can possibly ever have. That's the confusing part of this stage in the very beginning. It's part of being stuck in that vortex. So shame and loss of love is a really, really important start. So the loss of love is the idea of really grieving the loss of something that was really valuable to you. And loss in any capacity is difficult. Let's face that, right? It could be the loss of a loved one. It could be the loss of a pet. It could be the loss of anything that's just difficult. And it's not for anybody else to decide how you should be or shouldn't be experiencing that loss. This is an important point that I want you to know, because most people experience so much shame. A lot of friends, a lot of family will justify it by saying, he was a blip anyway, she was this anyway. But it doesn't help, and it doesn't make the loss, the feeling of loss, go away. So the very first steps, again, are for you to really identify the fact that you feel loss and that you have experienced something that's really, really important and painful for you. Doesn't matter if it's 3 weeks, doesn't matter if it's 3 years. Either way, it's still a really painful experience for you. I want to talk about what it means to love. This is kind of a heavy topic, I realize. What it means to love is different to everybody. But it's not for anybody else to decide for you what it means to love. So when you love somebody, when you love something, the value that you place on it, I recognize is hard to put into words. But you need to be able to own the fact that for you, whatever that experience is, that love is exactly that it's love. And that the loss of that causes you the pain or the stress or the fear or the angst that it causes you. And there are a lot of people that want to kind of have their input into how much it should or shouldn't. So let me give you an example. We stand up in front of all of our friends and family and God or whoever it is that you stand up in front of when you decide to get married. And we say our vows. Somehow we feel like that has more value than just saying I love you and being with somebody for 6 months. Either way, your meaning and your definition of love exists the way it does exist. So this is not for anybody else to decide for you. I want to talk for a minute about attachment. Attachment is an interesting one. So I vacillate between not wanting to be too clinical for you and also explain why. People want to know, why am I having such a hard time letting go of this person? So I'm just going to give you a quick background without sounding too clinical, but also kind of give you an idea of why it's so hard. So when you're little and you're born, you're firstborn, you're a baby, we have primary attachments in our life. There's 1,000 theories in the field of psychology about how and why we attach to people the way that we attach. But those beginning attachments in your life are really, really important. So if you had healthy attachments, if you had loving parents who nurtured you, you were breastfed, whatever it was. If you had unhealthy attachments, parents that were sometimes there or sometimes not, those attachments that you were taught at a very young age are carried through into our later life. So this isn't to blame our parents. This isn't to blame anybody who properly attached or who didn't attach. The truth is, everybody does their best as parents. This isn't that. But those attachments that you were brought up with carry into our relationships. So if you were taught healthy attachments, the idea of knowing that you can attach and then unattach makes it easier when you break up. If you were not taught healthy attachments, like attachments weren't constant, they disappeared, they were sometimes there, they sometimes weren't there, then later in life, when you go through breakups, those attachments, those unhealthy attachments, stay with you. So a breakup feels like you're losing a limb. So the pain that you're feeling is not just the pain of this breakup. The pain that you're feeling is a lifetime of connection with the attachments that you're used to having. So this will help later on when we start talking about healing, because I'm going to teach you how to have healthy attachments. And by the way, how you can teach your friends and family and children and partners how to attach in a really healthy way. But I don't want you to think that the heartbreak is just from the loss of attachment from this relationship. It is also a lifetime of perhaps attaching to people in a certain way. I hope that makes sense, because it's a really important part, and the assignment that you're going to do has a lot to do with your attachments, because I want you to be really honest about the attachments that you're used to having, the attachments that you've had, and even better, the attachments that you'd like to have in the future, right? So healthy attachments are ones that have a boundary that says, I love you, I'm not going anywhere, but I don't have to be so involved in your world that you can't breathe unless I breathe for you, right? Or unhealthy attachment that says, I only love you if you do the right thing. I only love you if you're skinny enough. I only love you if you make enough money. I only love you if you're this kind of a lover, right? So those attachments are going to be a really important part of this program that I want you to pay attention to, because it's part of what's causing you so much pain. Again, this isn't to blame any parents. They really do their best. Your job is to do better in terms of attachment. So this is a really important part for you. So the assignment that we're going to talk about, and I'll give you some instructions on that, is really about your level of attachment.